Hi there, this is David and welcome to the top 10 best Game Boy hidden gems. This was my first portable console and I played it all throughout the 90s. And while RPGs were pretty sparse on it, there are all sorts of other JRPG adjacent games available, as well as Japan only but later translated RPGs out there too. So here, I'm going to go through the library, helping you separate the wheat from the chaff to find those hidden gems. I'm actually going to be ranking these games based upon their relative obscurity. More well-known titles will be towards the top of the list, and as we continue, we'll get to the real unknowns. So, let's get started going back through the very first true handheld. Number 10, Roland's Curse 2. This is a Zelda clone through and through, but with 7 different characters to choose from, each with their own weaponry and playstyle, as well as a leveling system. I always felt that the combat in Zelda was kind of useless, because you don't really get any rewards for it, so I would rather avoid it if at all possible. As you progress through the game, you'll come across chests to increase your powers and abilities for each party member. Unlike the first game, you can have 3 people with you at any given time who all level up with their own specific treasure chests, and, most importantly, you can change who you control at any point. With huge levels to explore, tons of different playstyles to master, great treasures to find, as well as excellent music, this is definitely worth checking out. Number 9, Sword of Hope 2. While normally I'm not the biggest fan of first-person exploration RPGs, I was hard-pressed to play anything remotely RPG-y on the Game Boy. So I got the first Sword of Hope early on in the system's life while in elementary school, and while it was just okay, the sequel was released by the time that I was in high school, and it is much improved. Still starring Prince Theo, he actually leaves his kingdom of trees and explores the world with the help of 2 additional party members. And thank God, because much like its predecessor, this game can be brutally difficult. It's similar to Shadowgate, where you examine your surroundings, interact with all sorts of objects, and then you fight on-screen encounters. While this isn't Final Fantasy Legend, it is still worth checking out. Number 8, Great Greed. One of the things that I love most about retro gaming is that developers weren't afraid to experiment, and that's what you have here. Great Greed is unlike any RPG on the system. It's a food-themed, real-world-esque kind of Earthbound type setting, and a story taken straight out of Captain Planet. Then there's a strange pseudo-real-time combat system, where each button does something different. It's really fast-paced, and you've got to be quick on your feet because the enemies will continually attack while you make up your mind. There's some unique places to explore, like old record factories and hot fruit forests, so if you're looking for something different from the traditional mold, be sure to look at Great Greed. Number 7, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: Radical Rescue. Who didn't love the Ninja Turtles in the 90s? My favorite was Michelangelo. He was a party dude after all. And here, you get to play as him, and he has to track down his fellow turtle comrades. While the first game on the NES was hot garbage, many of the others that followed were pretty quality experiences, but none of them quite fit the mold of RPG. Except for this one, and here it's just barely. Radical Rescue is a side-scrolling Metroidvania with a giant open map that you can explore at your leisure. The map opens up eventually as you gain skills, power-ups, and of course, your friends, before you make your way to Shredder's lair and kick his ass once and for all. Number 6, Gargoyles Quest. This is the first game in a now-forgotten series that began as a spin-off of the Ghouls and Ghosts series, starring Firebrand. I loved the NES and SNES games in this franchise as a kid. It's just a shame that it's been abandoned now. Starring Firebrand, a fire-breathing, flying, kick-ass gargoyle, the level design is reminiscent of those Metroidvanias that we all know and love. But there's also a world map to explore, towns to enter with people to talk to, a leveling system, and skill progression. Over the course of the game, you're going to gain more combat abilities and conquer levels. However, the game is short even by Game Boy standards, but brevity is the soul of wit, as they say. This is Firebrand's quick jaunt through the underworld, and it's a very fun, and it deserves a spot on this list as a hidden gem from a long-forgotten series. Number 5, Mystical Ninja, starring Goemon. Poor Goemon. I remember these Legend of the Mystical Ninja games quite well, seeing them advertised in the Nintendo Powers that I would read each month, and I wanted to get a hold of them. However, the only one that I actually was able to get was the Game Boy game. Think Zelda, only with a wacky sense of humor and taking place in ancient Japan. It's a boatload of fun switching between the three characters, listening to the amazing music, and exploring the huge world. I remember thinking that this would be another cute franchise to enjoy, only for it to kind of die out with the abysmal, badly advertised, and downright terrible N64. Honestly, there was no reason to move on from the SNES. The N64 brought Nintendo down to a low point and just destroyed so many formerly great franchises. I hate that system for it. Number 4. Kid Dracula. Kid Dracula is a solid platformer and spin-off of Castlevania, originally released for the Nintendo, but then ported on over to the Game Boy. But while Castlevania is dark and gritty, Kid Dracula is decidedly not. It's kind of lighthearted and goofy as he traverses through 8 levels of ghouls, ghosts, puzzles, and bosses, gaining new powers along the way. The powers, things like summoning bats, generating shields, and reversing gravity, come in really handy as you're forced to use them all to progress. If you're a fan of platformers such as these, or even the Castlevania series, you really should check this out, as you'll find the music remixes tracks from the parent series, as well as bosses. It's such a cute homage that I wish that it did spawn its own modern series. Number 3. Cave Noir. This is another strange game that I normally wouldn't particularly like, but I was starved for choice on the Game Boy, so I had to play what I can get my hands on. It's a roguelike with randomly generated dungeons and characters who move turn-based, square by square. The game's divided into 4 separate dungeons, each with their own quests, and you can tackle them in whatever order that you like. Each time that you go in, you're greeted with a progressively more difficult quest, and while your stats do go up slightly, it's not really enough to directly compensate for the heightened difficulty, so you'll still need to strategize quite a bit. It's rather brilliant in its approach, and if this looks intriguing to you, be sure to look at it. Number 2. God Medicine. God Medicine is quirky and the storyline is definitely before its time. Nowadays, there are many games that also take place in a game world, or kind of poke fun at gaming in general. But back in the early 90s, gaming was serious business, and that just didn't happen. However, the Japan-only God Medicine was a pioneer. Essentially, 3 friends are eagerly awaiting the release of the game Phantom, only for it to be cancelled. But then, in a strange twist, the game takes on a life of its own, and the kids are sucked into the game world. The real meat of the plot is that you go back and forth between the Phantom world and the real worlds in order to save them both. It's a fun, self-deprecating journey, making fun of video games well before Hyperdimension Neptunia was ever a thing. And number 1, for the frog, the bell tolls. Look familiar? It should. This Japan-only off-kilter game uses the same engine as the much more well-known Zelda Link's Awakening. I played this about a decade ago when it was first translated, and if you're a fan of Smash Brothers, you might recognize some characters here like Richard. Now, while you might think that this game is just like a Link's Awakening clone, it's really not, because it's more of a puzzle-type game. Combat's just odd. You're going to get into a scuffle, and then you either win or lose, that's it. You either have the stats to win, or you don't, and you die. The dungeons are kind of side-scrolling, and you can turn into a snake or a frog to reach different areas. It's a lot of fun, but it's just so different. It's no wonder it's still hidden. Well, that's it for the top 10 best Game Boy hidden gems. If you like this video and what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting me over on Patreon for exclusive videos and early access to my content, heading on over to Twitch for some streaming fun, or coming over to my Discord to chat and hang out. The links to them can be found in the video description. This has been David. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.